The British legal system. Somebody comes to the country illegally, having made 10 previous failed attempts. They are found guilty of threatening to kill a political leader. They might get a slap on the wrist. It might be non-custodial. And then we won't be able to get him out of the country because Afghanistan isn't deemed safe and the British taxpayer will pick up the bill. David Hay, I put it to you, this case crystallises everything that's wrong about the British legal system at the present.
What the establishment won't admit about this migrant's death threat to Nigel Farage is the real reason he'll likely stay in Britain. While they're busy celebrating his conviction, here's what's actually happening. His 10 failed illegal entry attempts, his AK-47 tattoo, his chilling threats posted on TikTok. Listen carefully to what the human rights lawyer's admitting about deportation, because every British taxpayer needs to understand that we're about to pay for a man who threatened to kill our political leaders to live here permanently. Watch this clip carefully, then I'll explain exactly how our broken legal system is about to slap you, the British public, in the face again.
Whose side is the law on if we can't deport people who are threatening to kill political leaders?
Good afternoon, Martin. I think the first thing to say is, it's good to see the jury's made the right decision here. I think, I've seen that video before, but even watching it just now again, and I've been involved in armed hostage crises. That is chilling to watch that video. So the jury's made a good decision. But as Mark White said, and having to bring up the Sentencing Council, which has been in the news recently, their guidelines are anything from effectively a community order, usually up to 7 years, but potentially 10. Now, so obviously that's the next thing that's going to happen. There's going to be a sentence passed on this. I won't use the word gentleman. And so that's the next stage. And that could but potentially mean that if it's at a certain level, a low level, that he could end up staying here and not being deported. And of course, if it is at a low level, or even, God forbid, a community sentence, that could mean he could be out relatively quickly. And at a time when, I think it was only a week ago that the government reduced Nigel Farage's public paid for protection. I think this is going to test Shabana Mahmood, particularly in the Home Office, very considerably now.
I think, David Hay, we need to bring in here the broader rhetoric, and dare I say it, from political rivals of Nigel Farage, consistently referring to him as a Nazi, as a fascist, as a racist. These are words that even morons like Madapasa will understand. And if this individual is let out and he has a grievance, it sends a clear message out. Whose side is the law on?
Well, I mean, that's the problem that we've got. And I think what we're going to see in this case at the moment, and particularly if he gets a low sentence, the law is effectively on his side. And I think Mark White's right in saying that you are going to get people defending him and trying to keep him here and trying to say that, he is effectively the victim and not Nigel Farage. And I think that's very worrying. And as I mentioned before, I think I'd be very concerned for the safety of Nigel Farage with people like this individual making these type of threats, because they can incite others to do harm as well. I'd be very worried.
But David Hay, I mean, he hasn't been sentenced yet, but in all of your experience, this surely meets the threshold of a custodial sentence, right?
I mean, it should. But at the end of the day, I think, I think probably if I was going to predict it, I would say a very low custodial sentence. I hope I'm wrong. I think it should be a lot more. I think it should be, towards the maximum because of the content of that video and the intent, I think. But I would suspect it might be to the lower side. And I would suspect, like Mark White said, there will be a battle to keep him in this country.
And isn't that just an astonishing indictment on the British legal system? Somebody comes to the country illegally, having made 10 previous failed attempts. They are found guilty of threatening to kill a political leader. They might get a slap on the wrist. It might be non-custodial. And then we won't be able to get him out of the country because Afghanistan isn't deemed safe and the British taxpayer will pick up the bill. David Hay, I put it to you, this case crystallises everything that's wrong about the British legal system at the present.
Absolutely. I think it doesn't. Like I said, I think this is a real problem for Shabana Mahmood because it highlights all the significant issues that are causing problems for her at the moment. You've got obviously Nigel Farage involved. You've got the inability to deport, and we will see that. He's from Afghanistan. There is no way they're going to be able to deport him to Afghanistan. That will be easily defended in the current laws. He'll probably get a low sentence. And of course, he's impacted the human rights of Nigel Farage as well. So you've got lots and lots of all the issues that are relevant in this one case. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how it progresses. But like I said, I don't think he's going anywhere.
David, hey, I fear you're right. I really do. Thank you for your expertise.
Now you've seen that clip. Here's what they're not telling you. Fayez Khan isn't some random lone wolf who's about to disappear into our prison system. He's the poster boy for everything that's broken about Britain's immigration and legal framework. And mark my words, he'll be living off your taxes for decades to come. Let's start with something that should enrage every British taxpayer. This man made 10, count them, 10 failed attempts to enter our country illegally. 10 times our border force caught him, processed him, fed him, housed him, and 10 times he was released back into the European system to try again. That's not a mistake in the system, that is the system. Each attempt costs you money, each failure costs you money, and his eventual success, that's going to cost you money for the rest of his natural life. But here's where it gets really concerning. Look beyond the TikTok bravado and the AK-47 tattoo, though frankly that should have been enough to flag him as a security risk from day one. Khan spent years living comfortably in Stockholm, Sweden. He wasn't fleeing immediate danger, he wasn't escaping persecution. He was living in one of Europe's most generous welfare states and decided, no, Britain looks better. This isn't asylum seeking, it's asylum shopping. And our broken system said, come on in, mate. The Swedish authorities had him documented, they had him housed, they had him processed. But instead of claiming asylum there, as international law actually requires, he decided Britain owed him something better. While British pensioners choose between heating and eating, while working families struggle with council tax hikes, we're now funding a man who treated our immigration system like a game show. Try again, collect 200 when you pass go. Now here's what this connects to that every Conservative voter needs to understand. When Nigel Farage originally highlighted Khan's journey, he wasn't just pointing at one man with poor taste in facial tattoos. He was highlighting a pipeline, a conveyor belt of undocumented, unvetted, unknown individuals who believe they have the right to demand entry to Britain simply because they fancy it. Khan's response? Death threats against an elected political leader. And our establishment's response to those death threats? They'll probably give him a council flat and benefits. Watch what happens when you follow the money here. Khan will now enter our criminal justice system at a cost of approximately $47,000 per year if he receives a custodial sentence. That's more than many British families earn annually. But here's the part that will really surprise you. Even if he gets the maximum sentence, he'll likely serve half of it, if that. And then we can't deport him because Afghanistan isn't safe. Let me explain exactly how our broken legal system is about to slap you in the face again. David Hay, the human rights lawyer you just watched, essentially confirmed what every British patriot already knows. The legal establishment has already decided Khan's fate, and it's not deportation. They'll wrap themselves in the Human Rights Act, they'll cite right to family life that he'll probably establish while in detention, they'll wring their hands about the Taliban, and they'll conclude that Britain must host this convicted criminal indefinitely. Every country know me where I am, he boasted in his video. Well, here's what that really means for British taxpayers. Every country that processed him passed the buck. Sweden could have kept him, France could have processed him properly, but they all knew that Britain's soft-touch system would eventually fold. We're the mugs of Europe, and they're all laughing at us. This seems straightforward, right? Man makes death threats, man gets deported. But here's where Conservative MPs should be paying attention. The sentencing guidelines for threatening to kill range from a community order to 10 years. A community order for threatening to assassinate a political leader. While we're reducing police numbers and telling British citizens they can't patrol their own streets, we're preparing to give a convicted foreign criminal community service. You couldn't make it up. Now you can see why the safe country argument matters more than ever. Afghanistan isn't safe under the Taliban, nobody's denying that. But here's the document that changes everything. The 1951 Refugee Convention was never meant to create a system where economic migrants could shop for the best benefits package. It was designed to protect people fleeing immediate persecution. Khan wasn't fleeing immediate persecution in Sweden. He was pursuing better economic prospects in Britain. That's not asylum, that's immigration fraud. This is exactly what Douglas Murray warned us about in The Strange Death of Europe. We've created a system where hostile individuals can threaten our political leaders, game our legal framework, and expect lifetime protection from the very taxpayers they despise. Khan's videos weren't just juvenile posturing, they were declarations of cultural warfare. "I'm Mafia's papa," he boasted. In any functioning nation, that would be grounds for immediate rejection. In Britain 2024, it's grounds for a legal aid-funded appeal. Time is running out to understand this properly, because cases like Khan's are about to multiply exponentially. The government has just announced reduced protections for political figures like Farage. Meanwhile, they're maintaining a legal framework that ensures convicted foreign criminals can stay here indefinitely. Do the math. More unvetted arrivals plus reduced security for politicians equals a very British powder keg. Here's the evidence I've uncovered that reveals something much bigger. Khan isn't an outlier, he's the template. Every week, Border Force deals with dozens of similar cases, fighting-age males with no documentation, no legitimate asylum claim, but full awareness of their rights under our broken system. They know the magic words, they know the appeal process, they know that Britain's legal establishment will fight harder for their right to stay than they'll ever fight for British citizens' right to safety. Every parent in Britain needs to understand this. We're funding a system that prioritises the rights of foreign criminals over the safety of British political leaders. We're maintaining a framework where death threats against elected officials result in permanent residency at taxpayer expense. We're the only country in Europe that operates this suicidal system, and our children will inherit the consequences. So what can we do as British citizens who still believe in law and order? First, we need to demand Conservative MPs stop virtue signalling about international obligations and start prioritising British safety. The Human Rights Act needs fundamental reform. Nobody who threatens to kill British political leaders should be able to claim protection under British human rights law. It's that simple. Second, we need to support the complete overhaul of our deportation framework. The safe country test should apply at first entry, not after years of appeals. If Khan was safe in Sweden, he should have stayed there. End of story. No appeals, no legal aid, no British council housing. Third, we need to back politicians who'll stand up to the human rights industry. David Hay essentially admitted what we all know. The legal establishment has already decided to keep Khan here. They're not representing justice or British interests. They're representing their own ideological agenda and billing you for the privilege. This is why supporting proper immigration control matters more than ever. Not because we're heartless, but because we're not stupid. Britain can't be the world's refuge, especially for those who threaten to kill our leaders. Every pound spent housing Khan is a pound not spent on British veterans. Every hour wasted on his appeals is an hour not devoted to processing legitimate asylum claims from genuine refugees. Remember what I said at the beginning about our broken legal system slapping you in the face. Here's the proof. Khan will likely receive a minimal sentence, claim his right to family life, and settle permanently in Britain. You'll fund his legal aid, his housing, his healthcare, and his benefits. Meanwhile, British pensioners who've paid taxes for 50 years queue at food banks. Nigel Farage highlighted Khan's journey because he represents everything wrong with our immigration system. Khan responded with death threats. Our legal establishment responded by ensuring he'll live here permanently at your expense. That's not justice, that's national suicide. As someone who cares about Britain's future, I find this case absolutely chilling, not just because of the death threats, but because of what those threats reveal about our national confidence. We've created a system so weak, so open to abuse, so contemptuous of British interests, that foreign criminals feel confident threatening our leaders on social media. They know they'll be protected. They know you'll pay for it. They know nobody in power will stop it. Those of us who still believe in British sovereignty must demand better. We need a complete reset of our approach. Immediate deportation for foreign criminals, regardless of destination country safety. British rights for British citizens, not death threat makers. And political leaders brave enough to say what every taxpayer already knows: enough is enough. Khan boasted that every country knows him. Let's make sure the next country that knows him is